Serious. What is the most unexplainable thing you've ever witnessed? Story 1. After my cat of 10 years died in December, I would hear him meowing. Usually, I could just pass it off as thinking too much about him. We used to have a thing where we'd talk back and forth to each other. He'd meow and I'd call back, Clyde. He'd call again, I'd say Clyde. Then he'd run up to me and we'd cuddle. One day, I walked outside and I heard him as if he were sitting 10 feet away. Following right after, I heard my own voice calling from afar off, Clyde! The meow and my voice repeated a few more times. It was extremely nerve-wracking. When it stopped, I just turned around and went back inside. I don't hear him meowing much anymore. Story 2. My friends and I had just been to a few nightclubs last year, and we were walking home past the shop. It was about 5 a.m., and the sun was coming up. By the shop, we could see a man sitting against the wall with what looked like a white bag of chips. We thought nothing of it and kept walking. Then suddenly the bag of chips started moving and started flying away. It turns out this super drunk guy was just sitting there and casually stroking a seagull. How he did that, I will never know. Story 3. The house I grew up in was built by my great-grandmother who died in the house. No one in my family, including myself, really believes in ghosts, but this one had us scratching our heads. When I was about 8, my mom randomly lost her wedding ring. She had no memory of taking it off, but lo and behold, it was just gone. I remember searching for it with her for months. After a while, she just sort of gave up and figured it was gone forever. A year later, I brought up the missing ring again and jokingly said, "What if great-grandma took it?" My mother then looked up to the sky and half kidding said, "You'd better give it back." And then about an hour later, my dad comes home from work and says, "Look what I found in the driveway." Boom, wedding ring. Story 4. A few years ago, while on a road trip from Florida to Kentucky, we came across a group of 4 box trucks and 1 van. Now, these 5 vehicles were traveling together, driven by 5 skeezy-looking men who were driving erratically and constantly tapping their brakes. The box trucks wouldn't let anyone on either side or directly in front of the van, making it difficult to pass them. Their driving became more dangerous, almost running a few cars off the road, so I called the cops. While on the phone, one of the drivers saw me and looked in their direction, and I was scared. No cops ever came, and the 5 vehicles got off at the same exit in the middle of nowhere. We never saw what was in that van, and it was weird and a kind of sketchy experience. Story 5. When I was in high school, my grandmother died of cancer, and her funeral, my cousin and aunt sang Temporary Home by Carrie Underwood. That night, while sitting around a campfire with my brother and best friend, my girlfriend called me and asked why my ringback tone was Temporary Home by Carrie Underwood, which I hadn't changed for months. My ringback tone was actually No Sleep by Wiz Khalifa. I couldn't explain this coincidence, and it was something that I never forgot. Story 6. I was driving home from work one night at around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I live on a peninsula, so there's only one main road. It's kind of a typical suburban area with small stores and churches. As I was coming up on the Baptist church, I saw something odd over the steeple. It was a very large airship with a light on top that blinked red, green, and blue. The light was flashing at irregular intervals and was probably about 100 feet above the church. It was long, with vents protruding off the side where spotlights illuminated the grass below, and the airship made no discernible sound. I slowed my car to a dead stop, staring at this thing. I immediately thought to take a picture, but my BlackBerry only had a 5-megapixel camera and no flash. I had a nice DSLR in the trunk, so I got out of my car to get it, still stopped in the middle of the road, but as soon as I opened my car door, the thing flew off with incredible speed. I jumped back into my car and did a U-turn to follow it, but it vanished into the night sky. I still have no explanation for what it was. It didn't have wings like a plane, it wasn't a helicopter, it certainly wasn't a blimp. The only logical conclusion I could draw was that I hallucinated the whole entire thing. I had not been drinking, and I haven't had any hallucinations before or after this. This isn't even a case of me seeing something weird in the night sky and trying to figure out what it was. This thing was right in front of me, barely 200 feet in the air, massive and in my face. I spent weeks after my sighting Googling UFO, my area, in as many iterations as I could think of, but never found anyone else who saw it. Story 7. I was house sitting for my aunt and my uncle about 8 years ago, and their house is in a big subdivision, but at the time it was one of the only houses in the new phase, so it was a good mile from the other parts of the development. Anyway, it was a typical newish home, 3 bedrooms, a garage, screened-in pool in the back, skylights, etc. I slept on the pull-out couch in the living room so I could watch the big TV while I was going to bed. Anyway, on the second night, I heard this thudding sound coming from what sounded like the garage, so I went in to check it out and make sure nothing had fallen over or anything. Anyway, I didn't find anything. I went back down and eventually fell asleep. I woke up to a silver polish infomercial like 2 hours later, and as I rolled over to grab the remote, I glanced up at the skylight that was right above me, and I saw the outline of a figure staring down at me. And like 2 seconds later, panic sets in. I ran into my aunt and uncle's bedroom, grabbed his gun from the top of his closet, and called the police. Around 10 minutes, seemed like hours later, the police arrived and found my uncle's ladder set up on the side of the house, but no signs of whoever was on the roof. Not really paranormal or anything, but we never found out who was up there or why. Story 8. I was sitting in the room nearest to the backyard on my laptop when I heard a knock on the sliding glass door. I looked up to see who was there and saw a very long hand pull away. The fingers must have been about a foot long and were dark purplish gray in color. I got up from the couch and saw a short figure running away. It disappeared before my eyes. Story 9. Very shortly after breaking up with my then-girlfriend, I attended a college basketball game at a major D1 university by myself because I was feeling a bit bummed out and wanted to get my mind off of things. I told exactly 0 people that I would be attending this game because I decided to do it on a whim. The opponent was not very good, so there were many empty seats. I decided to sit in the upper deck of an arena that holds nearly 16,000 people. There were at most 20 other people in the upper deck and plenty of open seats in the lower bowl. As the game started, a random man approached me and said, "You're in my seat." Okay, that's weird. I'm literally the only person in this section and there are thousands of empty seats up here, but whatever, buddy, have your seat. As I'm getting up to choose some other random seat to sit in, the PA announcer comes on and says that a car in the parking lot has left its lights on. And it's my car, which is pretty strange. This is not some rinky-dink high school basketball game. This is a game in front of several thousand people at a very large, prominent school. In the many hundreds of games I have attended here, I have never heard the PA announcer come on to tell someone they left their lights on. So I walk out to my car and my lights are not on. Maybe the battery died? Nope, it starts right up. As I'm getting out of my car, I get a text from a phone number that I do not know that says, "I'm watching you, the Zookeeper." Why did that guy ask me to move from that seat? There's no way he bought that ticket. There were infinitely many better seats available. Why did the PA announcer come on at the exact moment the guy approached me? Who told them my lights were on when they weren't? And who the hell is a zookeeper? What the hell is going on here? Story 10. The strangest thing that has ever happened in my lifetime was when I was in college and we rented an apartment that was built in the 1700s in Salem, Massachusetts. Now, for the record, I don't believe in ghosts at all, but I can't explain how this or a few other things that took place there occurred. The apartment had 1 bathroom and 2 entrances, one off the hall stairs and one off of my bedroom. One night, we were having a small party with maybe 10 to 15 guests, and someone went up to use the bathroom and came back saying it was locked. There was no response to knocking. We all looked around and no one was missing. Curious, I went up and started pounding on the hall door, but there was no response. I went around through my room, and that entrance was also locked, and further knocking produced nothing but silence. Starting to freak out just a little, my roommates and I had a quick discussion and decided to kick down the door. Being an old house, it wasn't that hard, and we poured into the bathroom expecting to find someone passed out, but it was completely empty. The door was locked from the inside with 2 deadbolts. The one window had long been painted shut. The hair on my arms is standing straight up right now, typing this as it was then. How did not 1, but 2 slide deadbolts lock themselves from inside an empty room? A ton of other bizarre things happened there, and we finally moved after a mysterious fire that the fire marshal was completely unable to determine the cause of. Story 11. A couple of years ago, I was listening to music on my iPod in my bedroom. I got up to use the toilet and left the iPod on my bed. I returned to my room a couple of minutes later to find my iPod gone. I searched my entire room for it and couldn't find it anywhere. I went down to the kitchen, which is at the other side of the house, to find my iPod standing perfectly upright in the center of the kitchen table. I have no idea how it got there or even how it was standing up. It was a 2nd-gen iPod Touch. Nobody had been home, all the doors were locked, and I hadn't gone to the kitchen before that. To this day, it still amazes me how the hell it got there. Story 12. I once broke physics in college. We were doing a liquid-liquid separation in a huge car column, which is really just a tall tube with 2 outlet ports at the top, one on top of the other. We pumped too much water into the column and it started spewing out one of the outlets, as you'd expect. However, the water was coming out of the top hole, not the bottom one, so we had water going up a tube, passing right by an open hole, going an additional 5 centimeters or so, then shooting out the other hole. We had no idea what was happening and just stared at it while it flooded the room. We couldn't repeat it again, the damnedest thing. Nerdy as hell, but there you go. Story 13. We were sorting some boxes in the living room of my old house before moving out. We'd brought our new puppy, who was very docile and a bit clingy. She was at my feet the entire time we were there, so it was just me, my mom, my brother, and the puppy sitting in a circle going through boxes, and no one got up during this time. We were only there about 30 minutes. As we were finishing up and getting ready to leave, I noticed the dog was missing. The house was a basic ranch layout with an open living room and kitchen, dining room, long hallway with 2 bedrooms and a master and a bathroom, so she couldn't have gone far. We searched the entire house for the dog and could not find her. We searched every room at least 3 times, and all 3 of us were calling for her. There was no barking, whimpering, scratching, nothing. On our 3rd round in the master, my brother just desperately opened up the walk-in closet and out comes my dog, shaking and with her ears down. We left quickly after that because that door opens out into the room. Someone would have had to have coaxed the dog into the empty closet and then closed the door behind her or pulled it closed from the inside. There were no vents near the door and the heating and air had been shut off for months. Strange things occurred in that house while we lived there and intensified as we were moving out, so I don't know really what to chalk it up to. Story 14. The place I worked at was next to a graveyard, and we had a customer who told us all the time that our store was haunted. I usually just kind of indulged a customer with a conversation, but ignored her comments about it. Well, one day she came in and told me, "Child, I need you to be careful. Whatever is here does not like you. I don't want you hurt, so I made this for you to protect you." And then she hands me a silver necklace. It was a silver necklace with a real human tooth in the pendant, and I loved it. I wore it all the time and never took it off. Fast forward a few months and I'm staying in a hotel because my apartment needed repairs and I couldn't stay during construction. The first night in that hotel, I took off my jewelry to sleep and I woke up to banging in my room. A little weirded out, but I went back to sleep. Later, I felt someone grabbing my neck and I couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. A couple of hours of watching TV and I heard a really loud boom above me. It looked like someone had punched a hole in the wall. After that, I put that necklace back on and never had a problem again. Story 15. When I was about 17, I was at my friend's apartment building, which his parents owned. We had an apartment to hang out in the top floor and used to go to the roof to smoke. One night, we were about to go up, but I had to pee, so I told him I'd meet him up there. After I was done, I went up the stairs to the attic portion that was connected to the roof. There were no lights, so we always used our phones to guide us. It was an old building and the attic was creepy and cluttered all the time. As I made my way to the roof door, I saw a shadow pass by me. I followed the direction it went, thinking it was my friend. I kept saying that I knew it was him and to stop messing around. It passed me a few more times when I heard my friend's voice from downstairs. He got a call from his girlfriend and was in another room talking to her the whole time. Now, I have no idea what that shadow figure was, but it really freaked me out. I told my friend what happened and that I did not want to go back up there. He believed me, and instead of us going to the roof, we just went for a walk. Story 16. I saw a guy who looked pretty much exactly like me. I saw him as he was getting off the bus and I was sitting on the seat by the window. We both stared at each other. I did longer because I noticed the similarity first for about 10 seconds. It was one of the most frightening experiences ever. For a second, I thought I might be going insane or hallucinating. And for the ride back, I felt so many feelings like wanting to have met him and then being afraid of actually meeting him. I want to know everything about him, almost as if asking another person what it is for them to be you. I never saw this person again, and in a way, I don't want to because I feel like the earth might crack and swallow me, but it was just eerie. Story 17. I have 2 experiences, both of which happened in the same house. The first one was a nice experience. I had my room in the basement and was walking up the steps. No one else was in the house. I slipped and started to fall backward. There was no rail to hold on to, and the thought crossed my mind that I would be dead if I hit the floor, which was concrete, because it might be hours before someone got home. All of a sudden, I felt a hand on the small of my back. It shoved me up, and I turned around. There was nothing there. I thanked whoever or whatever it was and hurried up the stairs. I didn't want to be rude. The second experience was not so nice. I was sleeping and woke up. Important to note, I had never suffered sleep paralysis, ever. I was not experiencing it when I woke up. I had not watched any scary movies, read anything scary. It wasn't even close to Halloween. There was no reason for what happened. Again, I was fully in control. I rolled over to get comfortable and there was something in my closet. It looked like shadows and oil put together. No face, no limbs or hands, just 2 small pinpricks. I suddenly realized that if I called for anyone or got out of bed, it would be able to leave the closet and suck my soul out of me. I was sure of this fact, so I did the only thing I could think of doing. I closed my eyes and prayed for God to send angels down to protect me. I immediately felt a sense of peace and fell back asleep within seconds. I take a very long time to fall asleep. 30 minutes is my shortest length. It's usually closer to an hour. Needless to say, we soon moved out of that house. My parents experienced some things too, I think. Story 18. On the 4th of July, 2014 in Portland, Oregon, my friends and I were sitting outside watching fireworks, drinking beer, and we noticed two orange bright orbs floating in the sky. So we immediately think UFOs. I went home and Googled UFO 4th of July, Portland. I didn't find anything from that night, but I found claims of seeing UFOs on the 4th the year before. The next day at Portland Blues Fest with most of the same friends, a little boy, maybe 9 or 10, approached me. He appeared to be all by himself. He said, "Can I tell you something?" I said, "Yes." He continued, "Last night I was with my uncle while he was working. He watches security cameras for a bank. He was showing me how the thermal camera works, and we saw 3 bald men walking down the sidewalk, not emitting any body heat, and then he walked off." Story 19. When I was younger, 15, I was home alone with my brother, 19. I was sitting on the couch around 11 p.m. and all the lights were off. I saw what I thought was him because it was his height just looking at me. I took my socks off, balled them up, and threw them at him. Only it wasn't my brother. What I saw ran away like a dogwood in cartoons, and after about 20 minutes, I mustered up the courage to go to my brother's room. He wasn't home. I was home alone the entire time. It could have not been an animal because I lived on the 4th floor of an apartment building with no animals allowed to live there. Story 20. I've been to summer camps for language in England a couple of summers. The first one was at Bell School, a giant mansion with big land. Some nights we would sleep in the gardens and tents for fun, but since I was in the young group, the teachers would wake us up and walk us to the toilets inside the building so that we wouldn't wet ourselves. During one walk to the toilet in the dead of night, I somehow turned a corridor without anyone noticing. I wasn't bothered at all because I followed another boy who seemed to know where he was going. He led me back outside and ran away once he heard a teacher call my name. No one believed me when I told them about the other boy, and my English was only at a 4 to 5 word level, so I cried in frustration for a day. English, ghost, or boy, or whatever you were, screw you. Story 21. Once I was in the kitchen of my old apartment and a really bright golden yellow light flashed across the fridge for a second. It couldn't have been a car headlight or a reflection because the window shades were drawn and the apartment did not face any roads anyway. Another time I was in my bedroom and saw a shadow that looked like a man's profile wearing a top hat. I got out of bed and went to the area where the shadow was and shuffled a bunch of stuff, clothes, objects around. But the shape of the shadow never changed.